Should smoking be banned in this country? The chief executive of Philip Morris International, the tobacco giant, has said a carrot and stick approach is required by the government to get people off the fags. I don't know why a tobacco company wants to stop people smoking, but hey, stranger things have happened. Go woke, go broke. And one potential stick is an outright ban. But should we not have the right to do things that may not be good for us? To debate this now, I'm delighted to welcome Simon Clarke, director of the smokers lobby group Forest. And against the issue is, of course, Rebecca Jane, who is a managing director at mental health support group RJ8 and best-selling author who is pro of banning smoking. Folks, welcome to the show. Let's start with you, if I can, Rebecca Jane. Why do you think that smoking should be banned?
I think that given the year that we've all just come out of, and obviously, you know, COVID being a respiratory illness at the bottom of all of this, I think that smoking is probably just one thing that we could do to try and improve the health of obviously our nation and to relieve a burden on NHS services in many different ways. Something for me that contributes to 78,000 deaths a year. We should be looking to do whatever we can to try and minimise that.
However, lots of things are bad for you, aren't they, Rebecca? And obesity has been linked to death from COVID, and that would be a big concern. So are we banning donuts as well? Where do you stop?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? Is that there has to be a line drawn somewhere. So what do we do? Just because, you know, there's a million things in the world that would be bad for us. Where do we draw a line? This one thing that is a free choice, but not only that, this is an element that actually affects other people's health and not just our own. Obesity just affects the person that we're talking about, whereas smoking affects everybody around us.
I'm not sure that's true, Rebecca, if you think that obesity has an impact on the NHS that we all have to pay for. It could be that other operations are delayed because someone's being treated, for example, for, I don't know, a hip replacement due to their size.
But absolutely correct. You do have a point, that's true. However, in terms of sort of talking about food and things like that, you need food to survive. You don't need cigarettes to survive.
OK, well, what do you think about this? Now, I'm very interested because you are from Forest, which is a group that supports the right of smokers to enjoy a cigarette or two, Simon. Do you think that a ban is inevitable?
Hello, Mark. No, not at all. I mean, the reality is that between 6 and 7 million adults still smoke in the UK today, despite decades of anti-smoking propaganda. Now, that's 14% of the adult population, so it's not an insignificant minority. The health risks are very, very well known. And frankly, if adults choose to smoke, that's a matter for them, not for government, and not for all these anti-smoking groups, many of which get taxpayers' money. I mean, the reality is a great many adults enjoy smoking. They get pleasure from smoking and they simply don't want to quit. Now, most smokers acknowledge the potential risk to their physical health, but many say smoking is actually good for their mental health. Now, the artist David Hockney is a good example of that. He's now 83, he's smoked all his life, and he says that actually smoking is very good for his mental health. And unlike a lot of his peers in America, for example, who are on prescribed drugs, he smokes and it helps him get through the day. And that's true for a great many other people. I remember 10, 15 years ago, in fact, about 15 years ago, the former Labour Health Secretary, John Reid, who was an MP for a very poor constituency in Glasgow, he said that for a young single female with on her own with a small child, a cigarette was one of the few pleasures in the day. Now, he got absolutely hammered for saying that. But, you know, he had experience of that sort of background. And therefore, I think people should listen to people such as John Reid and many other people from that sort of background. What we're seeing with the war on tobacco is a bit of a class warfare on the working classes. We see it, for example, with the imposition of punitive taxation, which is designed to force less well-off people to give up. We saw it with the smoking ban. The smoking ban didn't affect all these lovely middle-class gastropubs where people can sit outside in a lovely beer garden. It affected a lot of backstreet boozers, many of which went out of business, destroying a lot of people's social lives in the process.
Well, yes, I mean, Rebecca, we know for absolute medical fact that alcohol is suboptimal for human health. It's bad for you. I mean, it gives us pleasure, but, you know, that could be on the list. What about downhill skiing or riding a motorbike? Life is full of danger.
life is full of danger, and that is the problem, is that where do we draw a line? I think that that's actually a really irresponsible view, with all due respect, to try and put down that actually smoking would be good for mental health under no circumstances. I think that that's an acceptable message to be sending out. I think that there's many other ways in treating mental health, and trying to drive a nation back to smoking is not the one. We have.
Yeah, but Rebecca, it's not for the government to prescribe how we improve our mental health. The government shouldn't dedicate a number of activities that are appropriate for us with which to experience pleasure.
I think for what they've done with smoking, and obviously banning smoking indoors, I don't think that they are sending out a message that's a good thing and that we should all now think about it to improve our mental health. It is very much a bad thing for our health, and to encourage that in any way, I think it's highly irresponsible.
But it's with us, and I would have thought, Simon, it contributes hugely to the Treasury, and I would have thought pays for much of the NHS.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the figures are that the alleged cost of treating smoking-related diseases on the NHS is put at £2.7 billion a year. Smokers contribute over £10 billion a year through tobacco taxation and VAT. So no smoker should feel guilty about their habit, because they're making a huge contribution to the welfare state. And, going back to what Rebecca was saying, I mean, nobody is encouraging anybody to smoke. We're not a pro-smoking group, for example. We're pro-choice. But it's incredibly patronising to smokers and to adults who choose to smoke to say, we're actually going to take this pleasure away from you because we think it's not good for you. It's none of your business if an adult chooses to smoke a perfectly legal product. And I can't see the government ever actually banning it. I mean, clearly society has changed a lot over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Smoking rates have come down and down and down, and I'm sure they will continue to come down. But as long as that is on a voluntary basis, I have absolutely no problem with that. And when we hear the CEO of Philip Morris saying we need a carrot and stick approach, well, I disagree. We need a carrot approach. Forget the stick. We're fed up with being coerced and told how to act. But yes, let's use the carrot, and let's have government, educate people about reduced risk products such as e-cigarettes, and encourage smokers to switch to those if they can't give up completely. But if an adult chooses to smoke, at the end of the day, that's their choice, and everybody else must respect it.
Why do you think, Simon, the tobacco industry are talking themselves out of a gig? Why are Philip Morris suggesting that people should give up smoking?
Well, I think understandably they're looking to the future. They've seen smoking rates come down.
Simon, say it like it is. They're virtue signalling. They're trying to look like a lovely, caring company whilst flogging fags to the public.
I think they're taking a business decision, Mark. I think they're diversifying because they're making a business decision. But
it's a headline, Simon. Come on. It's a headline.
Right, look, to the credit of other tobacco companies, they're not abandoning smokers. I've been very critical of Philip Morris for abandoning their consumers. I don't have a problem with them looking to diversify, but I think while millions of people continue to enjoy their product, they should support the rights of those consumers. But let's not say this is not all tobacco companies doing this. I'd say there are other tobacco companies, I won't mention them by name, but they are supporting their consumers, and credit to them for doing so.
Rebecca, there is an irony, isn't there, that as we consider banning cigarettes, we also are mulling over the possibility of legalising other drugs like cannabis. I mean, it's quite ironic, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely do. And I don't stand in the camp of legalising that either. But that probably won't surprise you.
Rebecca, many people think that if you legalise drugs like cannabis, that will free up police time to go after harder drug abuse.
Obviously I don't know the statistics because this hasn't been to me before, but I don't know how much time the police spend in dealing with, cannabis, cannabis offence.
Too much.
Right. Mm. I personally don't think it's to stand on the line of being make this a pro situation and to legalise cannabis.
Just imagine a scenario, Rebecca, where you can go to your newsagent and get a couple of wraps of heroin, but not a pack of fags.
Well, I don't think anybody's talking about legalising heroin.
Well, that is something that has been propounded by some groups who are concerned about criminalising drug use, given the fact that if you're addicted to drugs, you're a victim of an evil trade. And they say that if you actually remove the business model of these Class A drugs, you will actually improve people's lives.
Again, unfortunately, I'm not on board with that. I'm never going to be, and I don't have any other argument other than absolutely not. I've seen far too much damage. I've worked in criminal courts. I've seen so much damage that's been caused by drugs that there's not ever going to be an argument for me that they should ever be legalised. And I think that it is a lot about pro-choice. I do agree with pro-choice, but unfortunately, I think that we have to draw a line somewhere, and smoking has come such a far way since when it obviously came by whatever years it did came about. Some popularity in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. There's a reason why we've now turned into, obviously it's my opinion, not yours, that we've become an anti-smoking nation. And the statistics have drastically gone down.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's not true.
Simon?
In political terms, it's true, but the general public, I do not believe, are massively anti-smoking. It's true that the majority of non-smokers don't want to be regularly exposed to tobacco smoke these days, and the vast majority of non-smokers, I'm a non-smoker, and I can't remember the last time that I was inconvenienced by tobacco smoke. So smoking is banned from every indoor public place. How many more places do you want to have smoking banned? You want smoking banned outdoors, because outdoors the smoke is immediately diluted in the atmosphere. It doesn't affect any non-smoker at all. There is no health risk to a non-smoker from somebody smoking outside. Just going back to the very important point that you were making, Mark, about illegal drugs. If you make smoking or tobacco illegal, you're simply going to drive it underground, and you'll drive it into the hands of the criminal gangs who don't care who smokes. They'll be quite happy to sell cigarettes to children. We won't know what's in those cigarettes because, like it or not, a cigarette made by a legitimate manufacturer at least has to meet certain standards. That will not apply if cigarettes are sold on the black market and manufactured by criminal gangs. So banning things never works. We saw what happened when they tried to ban alcohol in the United States. That experiment failed and had to be abandoned.
Yes, they put the whiskey in
tobacco.
They put the whiskey in porcelain cups like this and pretended they were having Darjeeling. I mean, look, Rebecca, you do amazing work at RJ8, which is a fantastic mental health support group, and we credit you for that. And I also appreciate you coming on and propounding the argument for banning smoking. There are many people watching this show who think that is a good idea. They consider smoking to be a nuisance and an unnecessary burden on the NHS. But the issue you've got is that the moment you ban something, that ban has to be policed. So that's even more police resource required. And then you have to decide what's worse: tobacco, cannabis, crack cocaine, and that's going to be a big problem going forward.
Yeah, so why not? Let's just try it and see what happens. Give it a go. So let's do the statistics on it. I think that the point I just want to make, obviously, something that you went back to, 41,000 deaths are contributed to in people who do not smoke because of smoking. So to say that, going outside is absolutely great, it's evaporated instead, how does it even happen that we have 41,000 deaths that are contributed to?
Rebecca, where did you get that figure from? I've never heard that figure. Where did you get that figure from?
Google it.
Oh.
And also, is that actually in my column in the Burnley Express?
Is that your answer to everything?
Well, I'm going to back Rebecca up on this one because, Simon, we don't have the statistics in front of us and don't believe you know everything you read on the internet. But it can't be fantastic, can it, Simon, to be stood next to someone outside in a cafe and have the smoke wafting in your direction? It's hardly ideal.
Well, first of all, you're outside, and the smoker is forced to sit outside because he's not allowed to go inside. So, as I said earlier, how much space do non-smokers want to themselves? The reality is, if you're sitting outside or outside on a park, on a beach, you can always move. But I would say, I think the vast majority of smokers have become much more considerate in recent years. They are aware that some non-smokers, not a majority, I think most non-smokers are pretty tolerant of people smoking, particularly outdoors. But smokers have become increasingly considerate, and generally speaking, they don't light up right next to a non-smoker if that non-smoker doesn't want them to be doing so. And people have to have somewhere where they can smoke, without being harassed and harangued and stigmatized. It's completely and utterly wrong.
Rebecca, what would you say to anyone watching this who enjoys smoking and considers that life is for living and having fun and having some pleasures?
Hey, listen, my nana is that person. She smokes like an absolute trooper. She wouldn't, she loves it. She will not give it up under any circumstances. I understand this perspective, and I understand it from her age, and especially at 92. You know what? There's no point in me trying to change.
She's the best advert for smoking ever. Have a fag, you'll live to 92. Be like Rebecca's gran.
And she survived COVID too. So honestly, I do understand the merits on both arguments. However, for me, going forward and wanting a healthier society and all the rest of it, I just think that this is one thing that we can give up that will make a better life for everybody. And I'm never going to get on board with it being good for mental health, I'm afraid. I think that there's far other better options out there.
I'm going to ask the team to organise a pack of Benson and Hedges for me during the break. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Simon Clarke, the director of the smokers lobby group Forest, and Rebecca Jane, the managing director at mental health support group RJ8. You see, that is how you do discourse. That's how you debate stuff. The home of free speech and open opinion, GB News. See you in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.